Exodus chapter 1, chapter of Pharaoh trying to remove the Israelites. Verse 17, the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the male children alive. Verse 20, therefore God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very mightily. Verse 21, so it was because the midwives feared God that he provided households for them. And that brings us into Exodus chapter 2 and the birth of Moses. Exodus 2 verse 1, and a man of the house of Levi went and took as a wife a daughter of Levi. So the woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. When she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes for him, daubed it with asphalt and pitch, put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the river's bank. And the sister stood afar to know what would become of him. Because we're familiar with the story of Moses, the Moses basket and all that goes along with that particular understanding. And here we see that the faith of Moses actually started with the faith of his parents. We read there in chapter 2 that he was hid for 3 months, and then when they could no longer hide him, they put him into the ark of bulrushes. Then, of course, this is quoted in the New Testament in Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 23. By faith Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents because they saw he was a beautiful child, and that's a quote from Exodus chapter 2, the chapter we read, and they were not afraid of the king's command. And so we see 2 reasons are given for Moses' parents. First of all, he was a beautiful child, and the idea of that is that he was favored. And we don't know how much the parents actually knew about the plan of God, but either they were praying or God indicated, and we don't know exactly. God indicated there was something different about Moses, and of course we're ignoring a very important point that as a parent you should look after your child, and it may have just been that they were just protecting Moses as any good parent would. But Hebrews 11 would indicate that they saw something different about Moses anyway, whilst we don't know exactly what it was. But then the second thing was they were not afraid of the king's command. Of course, the king had commanded that all the male children were to be killed, but the faith of Moses' parents and also their love as well as parents protected Moses. And of course he was hidden for 3 months, but they were not afraid of the king's command. What I found quite interesting was the first 3 words of Hebrews 11:23. It doesn't say by faith Moses' parents. It says by faith Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents. I thought that quite incredible, that here was a monument to the faith of Moses, but it actually started with the faith of his parents. And that actually is a challenging thing in itself for Christian parents. And you remember when Paul is writing to Timothy later on in 2 Timothy chapter 1. 2 Timothy 1 verse 5, when I call to remembrance. And then he goes on to talk about the faith of Timothy's family. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5, we see at the top of the page, the genuine faith that is in you. We see Paul is referring to the faith of Timothy. But then he goes on to say, which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded is in you also. That's what stood out to me from Hebrews chapter 11. The genuine faith that is in you, that is by faith Moses, which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice. Here we see that the faith of Moses dwelt first in his parents. But I thought it was incredible in Hebrews 11 that it says by faith Moses. Thank you for listening.